Hey guys, well if you've been following on Facebook or Instagram, we have been playing with some crossbows over the past couple weeks, and because for reasons unnamed, I need some crossbow practice. Now I've played with crossbows for a long time, but it's been a while since I've done some of the higher end stuff. Now the first crossbow we did was this guy right here. I'm going to poke myself in the ear with a prod. The first time something's been in my ear. But if you can see, this is pretty much a very primitive version in using the bridle here instead of actually steel pieces to hold it down. And we have a very large socket, and this is the nut made out of steel. But this was the first attempt there, and the prod here is actually just a piece that this came off an armored personnel carrier. It's a spring hatch. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and basically what I did is I just stock removed and trimmed it down to the size that I needed. And like I said, the bow shoots pretty good, but this is a very, very lightweight bow. And it's not going to suffice for what I think I'm going to need. So we had to step up a little bit, and went back and pulled some plans from a crossbow book that I believe is a pretty standard for the industry. And the plans call for a big whomping one. Now, whereas that particular stock was pine, this one is oak. And you'll notice here that instead of just that square channel in here, we actually have a very close fitting area that also fits the same nut. Now, if you're wondering why this is, it's because you can clearly see here there's an axle for the nut to rotate on. But it is not that axle that takes the weight of a really heavy crossbow, because what happens if you were just relying on that axle, some of these crossbows, this one I'm hoping is going to be around 300 pounds, but some of the heavier ones go up to like 1,300 pounds. And so I don't care what kind of axle you got in there, you're going to bend it. So the idea of this close fitting socket is the fact that when the crossbow loads and all this weight is on here, it's pulling this way, that the load is actually being borne by the socket itself. So this nut's pushing against that tight fitting socket, and that's what's taking the weight of the bow instead of that axle, which would probably bend or tear out. All right, so we've got to upgrade this. This was the first nut we did, and it's been so long since I did it a little bit wrong. I've got to bring it back a little bit, make a few modifications. But the socket's pretty good, and the real cool thing here, if you've been watching my Instagram today, is the fact that I have actually been forging my own prod. Now this is the prod, or the bow of the crossbow. I'm trying to get back way back. See, it's got little horns up here, and this is made from a leaf spring from under a Chevy. We did use the Chevy springs because in times that we've used Ford springs for crossbows, they just didn't seem to last. But this is a Ford spring, and it is 5160 steel, and it should do a pretty good job. Now, there's a couple things I'm having to tinker with, because the vast majority of crossbow prods that I've ever fooled with have been one thickness, like this one. You see that? It's about 3/16 of an inch all the way down. Now, in a lot of the historical crossbows, though, they were not one thickness all the way across. They were actually thicker in the middle, and they tapered toward the end, which can be done with the forging process, but not so much with the stock removal process. In fact, earlier today, what I did, if you watch the progression of the photographs, you can see that I have that flat bar, and I originally planned to stock remove it, but it was just too much work. It was actually much easier to come in and actually forge the profile than it was to stock remove. But that's, again, using the power hammer with a kiss block, we've got one thickness all the way across. In the instructions for the really heavy crossbows, they sometimes start a 1/2 inch thick in the middle, and they taper out to about 1/4 inch. But that's for a monster bow. I mean, that is like that's like the Death Star of crossbows. But we're tinkering here. This is an educational process for me. This is me kind of trying to remember everything that I've forgotten, and trying to see what works quickly and what works efficiently. Not necessarily historical, and again, there's some very good reasons for that I can't go into right now, but I need practice on crossbows. So, big shout out to Mr. Mike Moulton, who has been an invaluable aid in this end. Mr. Mike Moulton has done a lot of work for the Society for Creative Anachronism over the years. He's a master armorer, and man, he's that is not the only title under his belt. He does everything well, and he was kind enough to lend me a little bit of literature, and some advice, and so we are moving forward with this. So the next stage here, before I actually get into the stock work, into the side plates, is going to be heat treating this prod, and this is where the scary part comes in. So there are numerous crossbows that were of heavy draw length or heavy draw poundage that actually have strings and cords wrapped around them in various places. And the reason for that is that the metallurgy of the time was not nearly what it is today. So that means that you had all this tension on the bow and you're putting your face right behind it. So if this broke, you know, slap is not the term. I mean, literally death come flying back to your face. So this piece of steel is really, you know, it is under an extreme amount of tension, and so it's quite dangerous. So, you know, if I've got a piece of steel that comes from a factory and I know that it works, that's one thing. This has been forged out, and now I'm going to put the heat treatment on it. So, you know, I've been doing heat treatment a long time, and I don't see any particular reason that this piece should be any different from anything else. However, when we string this up for the first times, we're going to be in full hockey gear because I don't want to have the teeth slapped out of my face. So I'll have some other little pickup videos on this end of things, and this weekend we actually broke out the big cameras. We filmed the dirt block forge. We've just got to get it edited, and we're going to have another big video about forging the actual bodkin points for these crossbow bolts. So it's going to be a busy week, guys. There's a lot going on, and like I said, before we got into the big stuff, I just wanted to give you guys a little taste of what we're tinkering with. And as always, you guys be good, and I'll see you a little bit later.